So hello my dear student, today inshallah we are talking about what is heredity. Heredity is trying to answer the questions why we have similarities between parent and offspring. If we look at this one, for example, we have here the male and we have also female. So by looking at the offspring we will find combinations between the properties or the characteristics of male and female. So this is the heredity. So heredity answers the questions make how can we inherit the properties of the characteristic or the physical properties from parent and offspring. So looking at this one, so if we look here, we have female and we have also male. The genetic structure of the female is XX and the genetic structure of the male is XY. So we'll learn in this lesson what is heredity, and also we'll mention Mendel experiment, and we'll understand also who is Mendel. So warming up, what is heredity? Heredity is the transferring of physical traits or physical characteristics or physical properties from parent to offspring. While looking at this one, here is the male, and this one also is the female. When we make crossing between them or mating between them, we will get new offspring. This is the first generation, for example. You'll find that if the father or the male is containing the freckles gene, the gene which is responsible for the appearance of the freckle, and the female have no freckle gene, the offspring inherit the gene related to freckles from father or from the male. So this means that we have inheritance of the trait, and this is the heredity. So what is heredity? By looking at this image, we will find that pictures we have Mendel. Mendel considered the father of genetics, who is the father of heredity, who is the first scientist who makes scientific study of transferring of traits from parent to offspring, and he established the basic of the fundamentals of genetics based on scientific study and observation and making a experiment and so on. So he is Mendel or Gregor Mendel, who is the father of genetics. So again, so what is meant by heredity? Heredity is the passing of traits from parent to offspring. So if we focus or we want to describe why we have similarities between us and our parent, this is related to heredity. So heredity is meaning is a transferring of physical trait from parent to offspring. So for example, you inherit traits from your parents like the color eye, like skin color, like also the length of the body and so on. So all of them related to heredity. So heredity, again, recalling that heredity is the passing of traits from parent to offspring. This one, if you want to study it on scientific study, this turns into genetics. So genetic is the reasoning of heredity. For example, if you want to understand why we have heredity and have transferring of trait from parent to offspring, so this one can be explained by genetics. So genetics is the scientific study of heredity or scientific study of how trait can be transferred from parent to offspring. So what did Mendel observe? Because that Mendel, who is the first scientist to study genetics or to establish the basics or the fundamentals of genetics on scientific studies. So what Mendel do? So heredity, firstly, is the passing of physical characteristics. What is meant by physical characteristics? Physical is meaning something we can observe it by our five senses, like hearing, like sight, like smelling, like tasting, like touching. All of them is physical characteristics. So the physical appearance is related to the external appearance of the living organisms. So it is a passing of physical characteristic from parent to offspring. What is meant by offspring? Meaning the new generations like this one. This one is the offspring. So looking at the female and the male, the genetic structure of the female is XX, and the genetic structure of the genetic makeup of the genotype of the male is XY. Looking at the offspring, we find that all of them is mixing between the traits of parent, the traits of male and female also. So, which something can be transferred from parent to offspring, which is something can be inherited from parent to offspring, which was something can be transferred from male and female to the offspring. This is called the trait. So trait is it is age-specific characteristics such as stem height or seed color or skin color or hair color or eye color. All of them is traits. Something we can observe it, something we can see it. Something is looks like physical appearance that seems on the living organisms. Like this one, we have to understand that Mendel, who is the father of genetics, he started with studying genetics by a specific type of plant called the pea plant. So pea plant is the plant by which Mendel started his experiment to study genetics because he planted this kind of plant for many generations and he found that all of them is helping in study genetics well. Like this one, we have the seed shape, it may be round, maybe wrinkled. The seed color may be yellow, maybe green. The bud shape may be inflated, maybe constricted. The bud color is maybe green, maybe yellow, and so on. So all of them is trait. Trait is something you can see it, something you can observe it. It's physical appearance that seems on the living organisms. So to study something, we have to focus on the scientific steps, the scientific method to study it. We have to do experiment to study genetics to be sure that this one is something true or something scientifically correct. So, firstly, we have to know that the something in the plant which is related to reproduction to produce new offspring is called flower. So flower is the organ in the plant which is related to reproduction. Reproduction is the process in which we make new offspring. It's called reproductions. So again, so flower, which is something characterizes the flower to be the organ of reproduction or the reproductive organ. We can see it that reproductive organ. So this is because the structure of the flower help it or enables it to make reproduction process because it have two parts. It have something related to the female and something related to the male and the female. Male and the female. So the male sex structure is called stamen and the female sex structure is called pistil. And inside the stamen, we have something called filament, and also we have something that can produce pollen grain or can produce pollen. So what is pollen? Pollen is the male sex gametes. And also the female sex structure can produce also the egg who can produce ova and both of them is the female sex gametes. If we make combinations between pollen and the egg, we can produce new offspring. So again, so the pistil produce female sex cell, which is called eggs, and the stamen produce pollen, which contains the male sex cell or sperm. So what is the benefits of eggs and sperm? This is egg and this is sperm. When we make combinations between both of them, we can make a process called fertilization. So fertilization is the process in which we make mixing of egg with sperm or egg with pollen. What is the difference between sperm and pollen? Sperm is related to the living organisms like animals, can relate it to animal like humans, but the pollen is related to the plant specifically related to the plant, but in both cases we have egg. Egg in female animal or in female plant. So by mixing both of them, they can produce new plant, and this is a process of reproduction. So again, so we have stamen, which is related to the male, and we have also a pistil, and this pistil consists of something called stigma, and stigma is related to the female. So again, so what is fertilization? Fertilization is the process forming a new organism when egg and sperm cell joined it together or combined it together. For example, if we have egg and this egg combined with sperm, in this case we can make new offspring or new organism. So again, so the process in which you make mixing between egg and the sperm, we make mixing between egg and the sperm, this one is called fertilization. So fertilization is meaning the process in which you make mixing between egg and the sperm to produce new offspring, to produce new offspring. So this one simply is the fertilization process. Next one is something so difficult, we have to understand it, and it must happen to make the fertilization process or to make the reproduction process take place and so on. What is this? This one is called pollinations. What is pollination? Pollination is the process in which we make moving of the pollen from the male to be transferred until it reaches to the ovary of the female. Ovary of female. So again, if we look at this one, this is the male, for example. The something in this one is male, and the male consists of some structure like what? Like anther and the pollen. The anther and filament, all of them is related to the stamen. All of them is related to the stamen. But this one is called stigma, and this one is called style, and this one in the base, this one in the base is called ovary. So what is the importance now? The importance of the something so important is that we have to move the pollen which is produced by anther. We have to move it. We move it until it reaches to the stigma. So once it go inside the stigma, it will move down, move down, move down, move down until it reaches to the ovary. Once it reaches to the ovary, it found the egg inside the ovary, so we make mixing between them. So pollen is transferred from the anther until it reaches to the ovary. The pollen is moving, moving, moving until it reaches to the ovary, but firstly it sticks to the stigma. So if we focus here, we'll find that we have the sex structure related to the female and the sex structure related to the male on the same flower. So in this case, we call this flower is a bisexual. Bisexual flower because it contains both of them. Contain the structure related to the male and the structure related to the female. So in this one, we called it self-pollination. So self-pollination is the process in which the pollen grain is transferred from the anther of the flower to the stigma of the same flower on the same plant. So this one is called self-pollination. So self-pollination is how it is making transferring of pollen from the flower pistil to the stamen in the same flower to make pollination. Next one we have to understand is purebred organism. What is meant by purebred organism? It is the offspring of many generations that have the same form of trait. For example, when we say this one is yellow and this one is green, for example, this means that, or you mean that the trait of the yellow is pure trait, meaning it doesn't have any other trait attached to it. And when we say this one is green, we mean this one is pure green. It does not attach it or mix it to other trait. So if we make generation, if we make crossing for this one for many generation, all of the offspring will be yellow. This means that this one is purebred, meaning this one is a pure trait Like this one, for example, if we make combination or make crossing between A and A, we'll found all the generation, either F1 or F2, first generation or second generation, all of them will be E capital, E capital. This means that it looks like the same parent. This means that this one is purebred. So purebred organism is the one which is pure, which is producing the same trait for many, many generations. The same for the green one. If we make crossing for many generation, it will produce the same trait, green. This means that this one is purebred, or we call it homozygote, or old, it also a pure one. So in this one, we study what is meant by fertilization. We said that fertilization is combinations between the sperm and the egg to produce new offspring. So the process in which we make joining for the egg and the sperm together to make fertilization process. What is meant by purebred? We study it also is the organism or the offspring of many generations that have the same form of a trait. For example, purebred tall plant always come from all parent plants. Tall parent plant. And thank you so much for listening to this one. Goodbye.